It's time for a live stream in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your opinions about what's going on with the Cincinnati Bengals. Free agency is upon us. And man, did the Bengals ever make a splash? And a big splash, figuratively and literally. Orlando Brown. Man, no one saw this one coming. 6'8". A lot of people are saying 340. A lot of people are saying 360. Let's put it right in the middle, 350 pounds or whatever in that range. To get Orlando Brown like the Bengals did for the deal that they got him for. I mean, there were free agents and tackles being signed by the teams, getting paid more than Orlando Brown is by the Cincinnati Bengals. But the big enticement was that $31 million signing bonus, highest ever to an offensive lineman. Orlando Brown get that money when he signed his name on the contract. Pretty sweet deal right there. Everybody was very concerned, obviously, when Jesse Bates and Von Bell go. Jesse Bates goes to Atlanta. Von Bell goes to Carolina. Hayden Hurst goes to Carolina as well. Man, Pepper, he must be a gazillionaire, not a billionaire. I mean, where's he getting all this money to sign all these free agents? But Carolina Panthers are making quite a splash. But the Bengals did retain Jermaine Pratt. They also signed Nick Scott, safety from the LA Rams. That is his career is just starting to ramp up. He's got a tremendous upside to him. He's going to be a big hitter in that secondary. They also signed some role players, some backup players, some special teams players, Travion Williams, Michael Thomas. Bengals did sign another offensive lineman on a one-year contract, Cody Ford, a teammate of Orlando Brown at Oklahoma. He's played left guard, and right tackle so far in his career in the National Football League. Gives them another offensive lineman from a depth perspective, and he might be a swing tackle in that competition. He wants to try to play that right tackle position. They re-signed Max Sharpring, who did a good job for them in the playoffs when he had to respond due to injury in the offensive line. They signed him for a year. Trent Taylor, the return guy for the Bengals, has been re-signed. So there's some have gone, some have come. But bottom line is I still think they're looking at compensatory picks, maybe not as high as they were before they signed Orlando Brown and Ford and others. But it's whatever the formula is. It's players that have gone, players that have come, the length of the contracts, the dollars of the contracts, all that kind of thing. There's a formula the league uses, and they come up with compensatory picks. So losing Bates, Bell, and Hurst, I think still, in Samaje Perine to boot, I think still will give them compensatory picks. Like I said, maybe not as high or as many as they may have had before they went out and they signed Orlando Brown, Jermaine Pratt, and Cody Ford, and others that they've signed. Eli Apple is still out there. Trey Flowers is still out there. Brandon Allen, Drew Sample, Clark Harris, Chris Lamons, Clay Johnston, Mitchell Wilcox. Those players are still out there. And the Bengals, there's multiple pots. You know, you want to re-sign your own, and there's starters, obviously, in that pot, and then there are role players and special teams players in that pot, and you have to have core players offensively and defensively. Well, Darren Simmons wants his core players on special teams as well, and they're vitally important to the success of a football team, and the Bengals are chipping away there. You know, and then obviously you've got your own players, then veteran free agents from other teams. Bengals have made some noise there, and then the upcoming draft. So the National Football League has become a year-round scenario. It is a 500-pound marketing gorilla, and everybody is excited about what's going on in free agency. And I think the Bengals, not just locally, but nationally, when they signed Orlando Brown, everybody was like, what? And honestly, it came about, I mean, Frank Pollock found out that morning that they signed him, that Orlando Brown was in play. And they said, look, we think we're going to be able to get this done. Take a look at him. We're looking at him. We want to make sure about everything. And that night, late that night, they signed Orlando Brown. So the ability to be patient, don't overpay, see how the market falls, and then the ability to pivot as an organization and pivot quickly and put a deal together. They meet every morning in the offseason, 8 o'clock in the morning, ownership with the head coach, with the scouts. Everybody's on the same page. And at that point, it's not like trying to turn the Queen Mary. It's like you can pivot quickly. And they went out and they got a deal done that Orlando Brown was excited about. And I think a big part of the reason is he wanted to play with Joe Burrow. They've already broken bread together in a hotel in New York. They were both out in New York doing media appearances, ESPN, the Today Show, all that good stuff. They're stars, and they ate cheeseburgers together in the hotel and talked football for a couple hours. So off to a good start between Orlando Brown and Joe Burrow. And they're killer bees offensively. How about that? A killer bee on the offensive line, and they've got the queen bee, the bee at the quarterback position. There's no question about that with Joe Burrow.
All right, Dave. This is exciting today. John Storr, he comes on every once in a while.
Yeah.
O. Brown for the O-line. Fantastic. How can we balance the need to have the line gel by game one without increasing the chance of injury over the course of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that Orlando Brown has played a lot of football. Now, he hasn't played a lot of football next to Volson, to Cordell Volson. So I don't think they're going to play an excessive number of snaps in preseason games, but I think they are going to do a lot of work together. Frank Pollock will, and he'll be working with the defensive front seven and working segments of practice where it's, quote, live. I mean, there's no tackling with the running backs, but you want to get your rhythm and timing down as an offensive line. The problem that the Bengals had last year, the reason that the offensive line wasn't very cohesive in the early stages, you had injuries. You had injuries, at the right tackle position, at the right guard position. You had injuries coming off injury at the left tackle position. So, I mean, these guys didn't even practice together, never mind playing preseason games. They weren't taking reps at practice together. So literally when the season started, it was like you were in preseason form trying to get these guys, in sync and coordinated as an offensive line. I think avoiding the injury bug is going to be big at training camp. There's no question about it. But I don't think you're going to see the offensive line, the veteran offensive lineman out there, taking extra snaps than would normally be the case in a preseason game. But you got to look at the fact that, how about this Bengals offensive line that we're talking about here now? Orlando Brown, by the way, 4 straight Pro Bowls, 2 at right tackle, 2 at left tackle, which is phenomenal, showing his versatility. He's equally adept at both sides of the line of scrimmage. To do that is pretty remarkable. There's only 4 offensive linemen in the entire National Football League that have made 4 straight Pro Bowls. And one of them is Kelsey, who just re-signed for 1 year, $14 million deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. And he's in his 14th year, I think. Joel Bitonio, the guard for the Cleveland Browns, and Quentin Nelson, the guard for the Indianapolis Colts. Those are the only 2 guards that have made 4 straight Pro Bowls. And the only tackle in the NFL that has made 4 straight Pro Bowls is Orlando Brown. So you look at it, the Bengals offensive line, Ted Karras has 2 Super Bowl rings with the Patriots. Alex Kappa has a Super Bowl ring with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And now at the left tackle position, Orlando Brown has a Super Bowl ring with the Kansas City Chiefs. 3 of the 5 starters, the Bengals offensive line, have Super Bowl rings on their fingers. Come on now. That's I don't know how many teams in the league can make that claim. And you have a group of offensive linemen that understand what it takes to get there and execute at a high level. I think that's nothing but good news and good vibes. Of course, the big question is, Jonah Williams has asked and demanded a trade. He doesn't want to necessarily compete at that right tackle position at this point in time, and that's on Frank Pollock to change his mind there, or the Bengals can probably trade him. And there's a lot of interest in Jonah Williams around the league. As many as 10 teams potentially could have an interest in talking about trading for Jonah Williams, but talk is cheap. Talk is one thing. Consummating a trade is another. And I don't think that's going to happen overnight, but we shall see.
London calling, as the Clash would say. Our favorite guy, Yash, from over in London. Interesting offseason so far. Personally, I think priority equals secondary, then PR/D line, running back, O-line, secondary, and PR/DL is key. Over-reliance on Reader is bad. Elite PR kills offense.
Yeah, I think they have a pretty good PR pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson, and I think they feel like they get another one in Sam Hubbard. But if you have an elite pass rusher that's available to you, you can never rule that out. Obviously, that makes the secondary better. I do think that when they addressed the offensive line like they did still did save some room to get a safety, Nick Scott, a veteran safety, coming into the league as a 7th-round pick initially. And he knew his role was going to be special teams. He excelled at that role. And last 2 seasons ago against the Bengals in Super Bowl 56, he started in that football game. He started during the postseason and made some plays at the safety position and had himself a good Super Bowl. Then he started at safety last year for the Rams and had almost 90 tackles and had a handful of interceptions, fumble recoveries, made plays. He's at the very, very beginning of the ascent of his career in terms of the thought processes of the Cincinnati Bengals to go out and sign him to a contract, and his contract didn't break the bank. So now they got, they've got a couple of guys, Dax Hill, that they feel good about, who has played both safeties. In today's NFL, there's no such thing as strong and free safety. It's you're either in the box or you're deep, depending on the formation. Most of the formation that changes the strength will roll those safeties. One becomes strong, the other one becomes free based on what the offense is doing. So you have to be able to handle both. You have to be able to defend the run and tackle in the box. You have to be able to tackle in space, not let people behind you as a free safety. Dax Hill did both of those. He played slot corner. He played outside corner. There's not many guys in the National Football League at the safety position can say they took snaps at outside cornerback. And it was a mixed bag. He had some good moments, had some tough moments, but he learned. Now that he's basically anchoring at the safety position, I think the big picture, him understanding the overall big picture of the back end is going to help him. He's going to say, I know I have to do this at safety because the corner is doing this. I know that because I played it. I played in the slot. I know what the slot's doing. So he understands the big picture, everybody's assignments. I don't think that's going to do anything but help him on that back end. So I look at him and Nick Scott, I should say, to make impact at the safety position. And they'll address it in the draft with some more depth. One position you didn't talk about there, Yash, is basically the tight end position. And I think I would not be shocked if they sign a veteran tight end a little bit later in free agency. I think they're going to come up and take a breath of air at this point in time in free agency, but would not shock me to see them sign a veteran. But they're definitely going to address the tight end position in the draft. And they'll also address all these other positions we're talking about with their draft picks and compensatory picks that they're going to have.
Yeah, Yash had 3 questions, but we're going to use 2. We're going to go back to Yash here. Best player available in the draft would really like an elite tight end or starting right tackle if Collins is out. Embedding athletic young talent with our coaching staff would be ideal versus technical guys who aren't as explosive.
Yeah, I mean, right tackle, I think Lau will be out at the beginning stages of training camp. I don't know how long that's going to be. I don't know if it'll be a quarter of the season or half the season, but I don't anticipate him being 100% ready to go at the right tackle position to start the season. I think that's why Cody Ford was signed, and that's why they want Jonah Williams to if they signed Orlando Brown and Jonah, they want him in the Derby at the right tackle position. Jonah Williams, Cody Ford, Hakeem Adeniji. They have a lot of people out there that would be competing at that right tackle position, and only one person will get it, and then the other will be a swing tackle. You have to have depth in the offensive line. Like we talked about, Cody Ford has played right guard and left guard in the National Football League as well as the right tackle position. So there's a guy that's got some position versatility. And they are going to draft. They will draft at least one tackle. There's no question about it. Just a question of how early they will draft it based on need. And they have multiple boards. They have boards, every position group. They've got their people rated 1 through 10. And then on the big board, they've got the entire draft, by preference on the big board by caliber of, is this tight end a better player? Is the second tight end better than the third safety? Now the third safety is better, so we'll draft that third safety instead of the second tight end when you come to the 28th pick. Those kind of things go on an overall big board basis. You have each position group is rated top to bottom in that position group. But then in the big mix of all 22, it's another huge board. And it's like, all right, well, geez, there's already been 4 offensive tackles selected here. There's a running offensive tackles. Is the 5th offensive tackle the better way to go? Man, the third edge rusher's still out there. We'll take the third edge rusher. Those are the kind of things that happen as you as the draft progresses, not just the first round, on an every round basis.
Want to stress we had 2 videos last week with Frank Pollock. One we recorded prior to Orlando Brown's signing or Ford's. So make sure you check that out because he goes in depth about 9 or 10 offensive linemen breaking down
for the draft.
Guys in the draft.
Right.
So some names you want to get to know. And then also we had it with right after that morning when they announced the night before, the next morning, he got on early with us, and you want to catch that if you haven't as well.
Orlando Brown, he focuses on that, the signing, what it means to the team and how surprising it was and how good a player Orlando Brown is. So yeah, it's crazy. We've got one that just went out this morning. Robert Livingston was posted this morning, and that was after the signing of Nick Scott. We do have some comments from Nick Scott with respect to the press conference he had when he came here with his wife and newborn, basically 2-month-old child. We've got that up on the posted up there for your entertainment value as well. So check it out. We got a lot of info for you with respect to Bengals free agency.
All right, I'm going to ask you this thing because Jim Browning asked the question. Would love to hear the O-line reactions when Brown signed. I can imagine lots of wows. What would it have been for you back in the day when you were playing a player of that magnitude signing with the Bengals?
Yeah, I know one guy had a reaction like, what? Jonah Williams' reaction was like, what? And Jonah obviously is not in favor of making the move to the right tackle position. Frank Pollock has gone on record saying that he wants to coach Jonah Williams, wants to coach him at the right tackle position, and wants him to continue to be a member of the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. There is interest in Jonah Williams out there for potential trade, but I know Jonah's reaction was surprise. And I think initially, once you get over the initial surprise of it, I don't think anybody thought that Orlando Brown was going to be a left tackle on a roster for the Cincinnati Bengals when free agency started. So I think now that other offensive linemen, it's like it's going to make our group better. I mean, it's 5 playing as 1. You want the 5 best guys you can possibly get out there. And you do know one guy that was very pleasantly surprised, and they want to build a brick wall to protect him is Joe Burrow. Obviously, you can talk about the fact that you're the key to success in our organization, but what are you going to do to show it? That was a big deal, a big move there to show Joe Burrow that we're serious about building as good an offensive line as we possibly can in front of you to make your life easier, as easy as it can be in the National Football League. Still not easy, but easier.
Dolores Coles, who day, everyone. So sorry the killer bees are gone. Probably not more than you, Dave. You love saying the killer bees, just like the H&H boys. But I'm not worried. Really enjoyed your interview with Coach Livingston, which you already talked about. Can't wait.
Yeah, I think that the killer bees made an impact on the franchise from a cultural standpoint. Jesse Bates was the initiator of players-only meetings on Tuesdays. Tuesdays, the players' day off. Defensive backs watch tape, extra tape. They quizzed each other. They problem-solved together. They formulated questions that they wanted to get answered at a higher level by the coaching staff together. Everything was done together. Von Bell set a standard of crack of dawn in there working out, 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, going through his workout. He said both of them set huge cultural examples. I can tell you for a fact that just because they have respectively moved on to different organizations, Atlanta and Carolina, they don't take all that with them, and it's a vacuum that's created with the Cincinnati Bengals. They'll take those cultural things and indoctrinate them in their new franchise, but it's staying within the group of the Cincinnati Bengals. Mike Hilton, Mike Thomas, Chidobe Awuzie, those guys, they were all part of it. They're going to continue it. It's like when I was a rookie, Bob Johnson took me under his wing and told me a lot of things that were very, very significant in understanding transitioning to the National Football League. When he retired, all those things that he talked to me about and told me about, they didn't go away. They didn't get sucked out of my head with Bob Johnson's retirement. They were part of, what I was going to try to contribute. And then you pay it forward. You pass it on to others. You pass it on to the next young guy and the young guy after that and the entire group. So I think both Jesse Bates and Von Bell had great careers with the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals appreciate what they did. They appreciate what the Bengals did for them, because Orlando Brown talked about reaching out to some of the Bengal veteran free agents, including Samaje Perine, a teammate of his, and asking about what it was like in the Cincinnati Bengals organization in the locker room. And those guys had nothing but praise for what Zach Taylor and everybody in the organization has built there. So everybody's parting on good terms. Everybody understands it's a business. You know, graduation day happens and things change. But it's not like what those guys stood for and what they imparted to their teammates doesn't leave with them. It stays. It's part of their legacy with the organization. And other guys are going to pick it up and keep paying it forward. And you hope that that just starts building momentum and gets even better and better.
Dave, as always, we got to talk about the great people at First Star Logistics, everything they do for us to bring you in the trenches with Dave Lapham. And, you know, we always have a fun time. We come in here, we've been in twice this week. We always have our soda, our popcorn, coffee, our hot chocolate,
That's right,
ice cream, slushies. You never know what the day is going to bring you when you come in.
There you go. There you go. It's a great environment and a great workplace. You know, we talk about culture all the time with respect to professional teams. The Bengals are very, very culture-centric, culture-oriented. It's been a big part of their success, and all the players talk about it. Culture here at First Star Logistics, second to none. I mean, employees, just like when the Bengals players left to go to other organizations, if somebody leaves First Star Logistics, goes to other organizations, they'll have nothing but good things to say about First Star Logistics to any person that is exploring the opportunity to come to First Star Logistics to come work. It's a great place to work.
Dan the man. I'm hoping he watched we just talked about the tight end and the O-line videos
Right.
of the coaches. So he's looking at the Ohio State right tackle Jones or Darnell Wright in the first round at the tight end, and then tight end Sam Laporta in the second.
Yeah, here top tight end prospects. I mean, I think first round Kincaid is pretty well regarded out of Utah as a first round tight end prospect. Michael Mayer is also first or second round prospect
people
out of
say
Notre
it's
Dame.
Mayer.
And Luke Musgrave, Oregon State, big one, 6'6", 250 pounds. You know, the thing is, according to a lot of these draft experts, gurus, they have a couple of tight ends as first round guys. Darnell Washington they have as a second or third round guy. I don't buy that. I think there's tight ends are going to get taken higher than a lot of these people think. Luke Musgrave out of Oregon State, big 6'6", 250 pounder in that range, late second, early third round. Darnell Washington, 6'6", 270 out of Georgia. A lot of people have him listed closer to 6'7". Laporta, 6'3", 245. They have him as a third round guy. I think he might be a second. It all depends on where the run occurs. Tucker Kraft, South Dakota State, 6'5", 254 pounder is in that category as well. Josh Wiley out of Cincinnati, we know about, 6'6", 250, third round guy. I mean, that's what they say. There's going to be a bunch of tight ends, as many as 10 tight ends drafted in the first 2 days of the draft, which is a significant number. So we'll see. I mean, there's some big time players at the tight end position. And you're talking offensive tackle, DeJuan Jones, 6'8", 360 out of Ohio State. A lot of people have him available in the third round. I don't know if he'd be available in the late third round, potentially, I think, more of a second. Anton Harrison out of Oklahoma, most athletic guy. Paris Johnson out of Ohio State as well, another potential first round talent. Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern, offensive tackle. I think he's going to be long gone. Roderick Jones out of Georgia, somebody that people like as well. Cody Mock out of North Dakota State. He's a guy, this is a 60-year senior who has played. He came out of high school as a tight end. He's played every offensive line position. He's very athletic. But people have him projected as a second rounder. Who knows? But all I know is the Bengals are going to have their work done, their research done, their board set. I don't really foresee them trading back potentially for additional draft picks. Maybe, I don't know, because I don't think the draft is first round centric. I don't think there's a ton of like got to have type players. I think the strength of this draft is like late 2 to early 5. I think that's where I'd try to get as many picks as I could, from additional, late second round pick all the way to middle of the 5th round pick. So Dave Lennox, is that the question we're looking at?
Yeah.
Dave Lennox, his question is, would you cut Joe Mixon to save the dollars on the cap? I don't know if I'd cut Joe Mixon. I think I might try to redo the contract potentially initially. And, a cut would be a last resort if in fact they get in salary cap problem area where Joe doesn't want to redo the contract necessarily. But now it's too rich of a situation. Cut is a last resort. And then he goes out and tests the market. If the market's kind of dry, you can come back to the Cincinnati Bengals for less money. It'd be the same type of thing. Restructure a contract or go through the process of being waived and having the contract restructured that way. Or right now at the running back, I would not do anything too quickly though. Because what do they have at the running back position right now without Samaje Perine? You don't want to cut your nose off to spite your face. So, Jonah Williams is slated to make a good bit of money this year. He's going to make $12 million as well. Joe Mixon, $12 million. They're going to have to, as they're going through all their plan A, B, C, D, all the way through the alphabet, those guys are involved in there somewhere. And at some point there might be a trigger, and then things might have to take place. We'll see how it unfolds and if it unfolds.
And how crazy does it get, Dave, for you? You sit there and you hear all these rumors now. Ezekiel Elliott gets let go by the Cowboys. Some people are saying, hey, the Bengals have interest in him. Is that agent talk? Is that, what's your thoughts on things like that as this process continues?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk out there. And like I said before, talk is cheap. Agents plant more information than law allows, really. It's you have to cut through a lot of extraneous and when you actually dig in, you find out that it's all
BS.
Yeah, total BS. All falsehoods started by an agent that wants to create a market for a client. Period. They're just trying to create a market for a client. And social media, now it's easier than it's ever been for agents to create a market for their client. All you have to do is utilize social media, and it just, comes wildfire. It's like fire department can't handle the fire. It's spreading so fast. So you have to be careful because a lot of talk is very, very cheap. There's no question.
We're going to go back to Dan the Man. He says, Lap, how soon for an O lineman to get his sea legs in the NFL? Is it different for a tackle, guard, or center? And how deep do you see the right tackle pool in the draft?
Yeah, I haven't really studied the draft thoroughly enough to tell you how deep the right tackle pool is in the draft, but I can tell you there's some good right tackles. I just don't know if there are right tackles in the 4th and 5th round. There always are, though. That's the thing. There's always going to be a guy that slides or that people don't evaluate highly enough. Sometimes it's, honestly, people can be a little bit lazy and take somebody else's evaluation and not do evaluation on their own. And sometimes the guy's reputation just grows because it's the easy path to take. So, there's a lot of work that goes into it. How soon for an offensive line to get his sea legs in the league? And that varies by person. Some guys jump in there their rookie year and are stalwarts. Other guys, it's going to take, a year or so before they get it figured out. But you would hope that if you take a guy in the 1st round, that at some point in his rookie year, he's going to be able to get out there on the football field and make a contribution for you.
Jim Browning had another question. He said, would it make sense to draft a backup center? Ted was a stud last year, but do they find some insurance for him?
Well, you got Hill.
Yeah. And Dan the Man came right behind and said, hey, they may be okay with Hill backing up Karras.
Yeah.
And then also a guy we talked about, Ben Brown.
Well, Hill is Ben Brown's not on the roster anywhere at this point in time. But Hill is basically pegged in there as their backup center, and he can play both guards. So right now they feel like they've got somebody that can fit that bill for them. And honestly, it would not shock me if push came to shove. If they had, for example, I don't know, pick a guy. If they had Cody Ford was able to play right guard at a pretty high level, kick Alex Kapp inside, if he could play center at a decent level. I mean, sometimes you find out, I remember when I had to go to play center for Blair Bush, I was the backup center, but I didn't have one NFL snap at the center position. But I had played it in practice and at training camp, for a couple of years in anticipation of an injury to Blair Bush. So when Blair went down with a knee injury, it was an unknown, and it worked out. For some reason, I adjusted and adapted the center position pretty well. And Paul Brown came up to me after my first couple of games at center and said, "We may have found your best position." You just never know. You never know with guys. I'm a believer in if a guy is willing to do it, if he's not a starting lineman, a fixture as a starting lineman. And I kicked in from guard to center because I was designated the backup center, even though I didn't have any snaps. So I don't know what we would have done if it didn't work out, to be honest with you. But you don't know until you try it. So if you're a lineman in the National Football League, even if you're a quality tackle, take some reps at guard, because you may have to kick inside, and you may have a rash of injuries that put your team in a situation where you may have to kick inside to finish the game as a guard. It's a lot easier to go tackle to guard than it is guard to tackle, in my estimation, having played all 5 spots in the offensive line. But it's something that for the betterment of the team, it might not be a bad idea that more coaches allow players to do that, and players maybe suggest that they want to do that.
Mason has a question. Dave, if you had to pick the 2 most likely positions the Bengals address with their first pick, what would they be?
Boy, it's a great question. I don't know how the first round is going to unfold. They're not going to really know who they're going to take. They'll have the top tight end. They'll have the top 2 tight ends. They'll have the top 2 corners. They'll have the top 2 edge rushers, top 2 safeties, top 2 at every position on their position boards. And then as the round unfolds, as guys go, what's left? So at 28, you don't really have an on what position is going to have a run. From pick 14 to pick 23, if 3 offensive tackles go, well, you probably won't be taking that position. But if 3 edge rushers go and the tackles don't, well, now you might be thinking about the offensive tackle position a little bit more. Right now, I'm not sure at the tight end position if there's a tight end there at 28 and there's already been a couple 3 taken, you may want to say, I might pull the trigger on the 3rd or 4th tight end here, because in the second round, we may be down to just crumbs at that point. So tight end might be a position that they'll address in the first round of the draft, if in fact they don't sign anybody late in free agency. So that's what I'm saying. To say right now this is going to occur, it's a crapshoot. Because right now they got plan A, B, C, D, E for free agency, and then free agency in the draft. Because free agency affects what positions you address in the draft. Because right now, the offensive line, just like last year when they signed 3 starters in free agency, the offensive line was a priority. The offensive line is not going to be as big a priority right now unless some guy that they have rated as middle of the first round is there at 28. That's when you say, just like Orlando Brown, you didn't think Orlando Brown was going to be in your bailiwick. Well, what if a really strong player for some reason slides to 28 in the offensive line? You got to be able to pivot and adapt and say, he's going to make our football team better. This guy could be one of the 5 best linemen on our football team. You make the move, or an edge rusher, or a corner, or whatever it is. So, it's not just if you're in the top 5 or the top 10 in the draft, It's much easier to prognosticate. When you're at 28, crapshoot.
Tom Jones is stating the trade, Jonah Williams trade is heating up moments ago, which if you look on your phone and Google, you'll see a bunch of little articles have popped up in the last 2 hours. I even saw one saying the Steelers. I can't see the Bengals trading Jonah Williams to the Steelers.
No, that wouldn't be a priority.
So I've seen Jets, I've seen Bears, I've seen multiples. Let me ask you this, Dave. What would be the value of a Jonah Williams in the trade? What can you get for a Jonah Williams?
That's a good question. I think the market will dictate it. The fact is, though, you spent an 11th pick of the draft on Jonah Williams, so you don't want to give him away. You don't want it to be a fire sale. And again, what the Bengals have shown an ability to do is patience and pivot. So same thing with Jonah Williams. It may take a while. It may take a long while. It may not even happen, but you have to explore all possibilities and then evaluate each and every scenario and see if there is a scenario that fits with what you're looking for. I would think if you spent the 11th pick in the draft on a guy who has been a solid starter in the National Football League, I don't see how you can't. I mean, it's got to be at least a 3rd round pick or better. In my mind, it's got to be. But, these teams that are looking to make a deal, they're not going to be offering that. It'll be, all right, I'll give you a 5th. Oh, I'd like a 1st. No, I'll give you a 4th. Oh, I'd like a 2nd. I'll give you 4th. And then we'll settle on a 3rd, whatever. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. A lot of people may show initial interest, but when push comes to shove, when now you have to talk turkey, who is still in the mix? It would not shock me if 10, 15, almost half the teams in the NFL would say, yeah, I'll talk to you about Jonah Williams. I'll talk to you about him. Offensive linemen, there's a shortage of offensive linemen in the National Football League. And that's why, if they decide as an organization and Frank Pollock says, hell, Jonah Williams is a good football player. I want to coach him at right tackle. I think he can be a good right tackle for us, and he gets him in that mindset where Jonah's in that mix and wants to compete at right tackle. Frank Pollock maybe, I don't want to give Jonah Williams up for that. I don't want to make that team better, and we're taking a step back with that late of a pick or whatever the case may be. I mean, everybody's got a voice. The final voice is still Mike Brown. That'll be the guy that makes the final call. He'll listen to everybody's input, and they'll take a vote. And if it's a tie, Mike Brown is the tiebreaker.
Vanguard says this Jonah Williams drama is distracting. And then William House follows up. He goes, I think Jonah Williams needs to be more of a team player and move to right to make this team the best it could be. I believe his attitude does not fit with the culture.
Yeah, I mean, there's you can say that. I mean, that obviously the first reaction of a lot of people is, oh man, what a baby. I mean, the guy's an NFL player. Come on now. It's like, but if your whole career has been based on trying to be the best left tackle you can be, and you get drafted out of Alabama that won national championship when you were there playing that left tackle position, you get drafted as the 11th pick in the draft as the left tackle, in your mind, it's like Orlando Brown is adamant. I didn't want to play that right tackle position like Kansas City was talking about a little bit. I want to stay at the left tackle position. Well, Kansas City decides pretty much to move on. They sign another guy in free agency who hasn't played left tackle and given him more than Orlando Brown signed for with the Bengals to play Orlando Brown's spot. How do you justify that? Where you let a guy that goes to the Pro Bowl 4 straight years go to another AFC team, a rival team, somebody that you played in deep into the playoffs for a few years, and sign a guy from another team that's never played the position for more money. If I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I'm like, what is going on? So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out and all unfolds for Jonah Williams and the Cincinnati Bengals.
And as you said, you have an agent involved who you got a guy coming, contracts coming up. He's making sure he's working to get his guy what he can get him.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, let's face it, they exercised the 5th year option, $12 million. not going to be a backup. He's not going to be a depth guy at $12 million a year. That ain't happening. If he's not the starting right tackle, something's got to happen. I mean, basically, he's priced himself, at this stage of his career by his play as being a starter in the National Football League. They're not going to pay a backup offensive lineman, I wouldn't think, $12 million a year. If they are, shoot, I have to give it another try. It's crazy.
Clouds of 7. Hey, Dave and Dave, do you think we'll wait to see Lamar Jackson's deal before we finalize a deal with Joe? Do you think Watson's contract was worked with Joe and Lamar's extensions in mind? Seems so.
Watson's contract was worked with Joe and Lamar's extensions in mind? I don't think so. Why would the Cleveland Browns have paid Watson? The Cleveland Browns just decided to be an outlier as of now and fully guarantee a contract for Deshaun Watson. I mean, they weren't saying, I'm going to overpay Deshaun Watson, so now the Bengals have to overpay Joe Burrow and the Baltimore Ravens have to overpay Lamar Jackson. I mean, it was Deshaun Watson was the Cleveland Browns made a decision that shocked the rest of the National Football League. And it is, in my mind, like we talked about multiple times before, who's going to be the second shoe to drop? The first shoe dropped, Cleveland Browns. Right now it's an outlier. If the second shoe drops, now it becomes a trend. Now you have two teams that have fully guaranteed contracts. And as you can see, Lamar Jackson's out there on the market. Who stepped up and are talking to him about a long-term, fully guaranteed contract? Squadouche. So who wants to be that second shooter drop and become the trendsetter? Doesn't appear to be many at this point in time. So,
yeah, and the Browns reported last week restructured Watson's contract to open up almost $36 million in cap space.
But I bet they didn't de-guarantee it. It's all still fully guaranteed. That's the stumbling block. That's the key. And when they restructure it, all they did was kick it down the road. Watson's going to get guaranteed money for more years is what it boils down to. They didn't take any money away from him, I bet. I think they just, lengthened it, just kicked the can down the road a little bit. He got so much money up front. He only got $1 million the first year of his contract because he got between 25 and 30 million to sign the deal or whatever. Crazy.
Phil S. basically says, who actually called us $7 million to keep him be playing behind the best offensive lineman we've had? He might be a monster. I'm sure he's talking about Jonah. If you're not the right, as you said just a minute ago, if you're not the starting right tackle, your money's going to go down tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to make the roster at $12 million a year if you're not the starting right tackle. And Jonah right now is saying that he doesn't want to go and get in that mix at the right tackle position. And he's requesting a trade, demanding a trade, whatever the case may be. I don't know how actively the Bengals are soliciting a trade, but it sounds like teams are starting to offer opportunities to make a trade for Jonah Williams. So I'm not sure it's going to happen overnight. I don't think when we wake up tomorrow morning, Jonah Williams is going to be traded. No. I don't think that is going to be the case. And it may be quite a while and we'll see. I mean, people have changed their minds before. Maybe Jonah Williams will decide, upon further review, I'm going to go over there and compete to be the best right tackle I can be for the Cincinnati Bengals. And honestly, Orlando Brown's value, he's going to play longer in the National Football League because he can play both left and right equally well. 4 straight Pro Bowls, 2 at right, 2 at left. That's rare. That's a rare talent to have. I can tell you that.
And the one thing I noticed putting together the video with our Frank Pollock interview was how many of the guys in the draft that had played both in college, multiple guys.
Well, and the thing is, like we've talked about earlier, the swing tackle is an all-important position. That third tackle, is going to get some snaps. Chances are there's going to be, hopefully not a long period of time, but your left or right tackle may get nicked up. And that guy has to be able to go in there and not, performance not fall off a cliff. So these guys that are playing both sides during their college careers and showing the versatility to play both sides, I think that's smart.
Kelly wanted to know, Dave, just for fun, pretend you're the GM. Who is your dream pick at free agent and or draft prospects?
I don't know. My dream was answered with Orlando Brown, I think. As a former lineman, I mean, I was as excited as a lot of people when that young man became available. That's a great question. It's a great question. Honestly, I'd like to see our boy from Notre Dame playing tight end with the Bengals. I think for a lot of reasons. I think the hometown draw, the appeal of that. Plus, first of all, you have to be able to play, and I think that he just has an innate feel for the game of football. When I watch him, he does things that are not normally done. He just has tremendous instincts, awareness, a feel for the game that you just really can't coach, necessarily. Either a guy has it or he doesn't. And, he may not be the biggest, fastest, strongest or whatever, but he is one hell of a football player. I can tell you that. And he can make plays. He can block. He can catch. I'd like to see him at the tight end position. I'm not sure that's going to be the case, but that one might have some intrigue if I could pull that off.
Yeah, Mark Jewett agrees with you. I like Mayer out of Notre Dame. Plus, he loves our Bengals, so he would definitely be motivated.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like the perfect fit. It's almost like the dream. You were talking about what would be the dream situation. You have a great player that born and raised as a fan of the organization. That's just that's almost like Hollywood. That's too easy a script to write, I guess.
We're going to see if we got anything else here before we go, Dave, because I'm going to get through the comments here because we've been on now for a little over 40, almost 48 minutes.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Let's go to the Rocky. He wants to know, does the Bengals have enough money to re-sign Joe Burrow and T. Higgins?
Yeah, that's the great question. I mean, I know they're both priorities. There's no question about that. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Logan Wilson. That trio right there is a core of players that finished the third year of their rookie contracts, and you're able to work deals out. Will they be able to get one of them done, two of them done? I don't know if they can get all three of them done, but it all depends on a lot of things. And a big part of it is, what are the players looking for? It is interesting. Sometimes when you get out there in the marketplace, it's drier than you think. Every player that goes into free agency thinks he's going to hit a grand slam. Well, some hit home runs, some hit doubles in the gap. A lot of guys pop out though, and then some guys even strike out. I mean, there's no guarantees when you become a free agent that you are going to get the bag, as they say these days. You're not going to necessarily break the bank. Everybody can't. There's a salary cap. Everybody can't. And it's funny how on a year-by-year basis, 1 year, boy, receivers aren't getting paid in free agency. This year, boy, running backs aren't getting paid in free agency. Boy, this offensive lineman didn't get the kind of money that he thought he might make. I mean, Orlando Brown, I think, was probably a little surprised by the marketplace when he got out there, and the Cincinnati Bengals jumped. I mean, it's still a ton of money. Are you kidding me? $64 million, $31 million signing bonus is life-changing money for 5 generations of his family. I mean, if it's handled right.
Dave, back when you were playing, did you ever think of that type of money?
No. I mean, it wasn't even any form of realistic. It was like, I mean, you think about $1 million. A guy is going to get $1 million to play a sport. Unheard of. Impossible. Never happened. Oh yeah, it's happened and more. No question.
Gregory Smith, basically, why would Burrow sign with the Bengals if they don't go all in on the O-line? National broadcasters have recommended Burrow leave the Bengals due to the weak O-lines. One, they just don't know Joe Burrow.
Well, and why do you consider it a weak old line with the Bengals when 3 of the 5 guys have gone to the Super Bowl and won it? 3 of the 5 members of the offensive line. I wouldn't say that 2 years in a row now, the biggest investment the Bengals have made in free agency is the offensive line. 4 starters, 4 potential starters in veteran free agency, millions of dollars spent in the offensive line. We just talked about Orlando Brown getting a $31 million signing bonus. I mean, Karras, Kappa, Collins last year, a lot of money invested in the offensive line. I think that I think the opposite. I think Joe Burrow realizes they're doing everything they possibly can to build a good brick wall in front of them. I don't know how much more they can commit or spend in the offensive line. It is a position where there's the most starters. There's only 11 starters offensively. 5 of them are linemen, but you can't put all your money into the offensive line. You got to pay the skill players too, and there's a salary cap involved. So got to get it figured out, and they will. They'll get it figured out.
All right, only a couple more. Mark Jewett's back. Tight end from the Raiders. He came in for a visit. Any more on him?
Tight end for the Raiders.
Was that Monroe?
Who came in? Moreau.
Former LSU.
I haven't heard anything more about Moreau. No, I mean that would be a veteran free agent though that would make some sense. Would fit the budget I think a little bit. It's possible.
Frederick talks crypto. Hey Dave, do you believe Mixon is here for the upcoming season?
I do, in some way, shape, or form. I think he's going to be here. Will he be here with the same deal that he's got going into the season at this stage? Don't know. Could, but maybe not. That's again, as you start going through every phase of free agency in the draft and try to put your team together, and plan A caused you to do this. Now we're at this is a plan C area. This is what we talked about doing if this cropped up and occurred. So there's miles to go before they rest, that's for sure. But his deal could be redone. But I do think that Joe would not surprise me if Joe Mixon's on the roster. Definitely not surprise me whatsoever.
Les Hernandez, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the guy from Pitt, Dave. He says, hello, Lapham Dave. What about the Kansas kid from Pitt? Comparisons to Pitt legend Aaron Donald. He would be interesting. Yeah,
well, if they're comparing him to Aaron Donald, he shouldn't be around very long.
No,
I mean, if you've got an interior defensive lineman, but honestly, the Bengals, every single starter in their offensive line, they have one of the highest paid defensive lines, I should say, in football. They paid everybody. They paid their 2 defensive tackles. They paid their 2 edge rush guys. I mean, they're a very highly paid defensive line. I know they're in the top 5, maybe even higher than that in the National Football League. So they have realized that, just like our podcast, it starts in the trenches.
I think we're going to call it a day, Dave.
All righty.
We've been in here since 9-ish this morning. We want to thank everybody for being in the trenches with Dave Lapham from the First Star Logistics Studios. Again, we cannot thank enough the people at First Star Logistics for everything they do for us.
And I will say that, like I said before, and I'll stand on it every time, you guys are educated. You guys are very intelligent fans and understand football. And you ask questions that are thought-provoking, and it's good. And we're not always going to agree on opinions. That's what makes sports beautiful. But I love to hear your guys, and I love to get your questions. It does make you think, no question about it. Thanks for participating, and until next time when we're on a live stream, we'll catch up. Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.